So, Murray, what, from your perspective, would you want to see changed with a new Canadian administration, a new federal government here in Canada? What would you want to see?
But does to me, it doesn't matter who's in power, but we need to have a change in philosophy. If you have to have a little bit more pro-business agenda.
Hmm.
Right now, that's not the case. And part of that has to do with taxation. Clearly, part of it has to do with regulation. And, you're just bottlenecked at every stage in this country to get any project done. And how can you plan a project when you don't know when you can get it done and what the rules are and everything else? So we really have it's going to be a long road, Catherine, I
Hmm.
think, to change that, to get capital to come back in this country. And it can happen, but you're going to have a
Hmm.
different mindset that says we're more pro-business. And that's my view.
Hmm.
Exactly how we're going to do it, it's going to be complicated because we've got big deficits now. So, clearly the governments are going to need tax dollars. Where do you get the tax dollars from? Are we going to get it by taxing people more? Or are we going to create more jobs, more really good jobs that actually grow the size
Hmm.
of the pie rather than just shift it around and just go into deficit every year? If you're going to deficit finance, build something that's going to build.
Right.
That's great. Don't just spend it.
Yeah.
Don't just give it away. You got to build something, then it's okay to deficit
Hmm.
finance. Same as me. If I'm building something, well, then I can get more debt. But if I'm not building anything, well, I better not be adding to the debt. Eventually, it's going to come home to roost.
Hmm.
I think
Murray,
you
it's
just need a
interesting.
pro-business approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A pro-business approach. It's interesting that what specifically changed, do you think, in terms of why it's so much more difficult to implement a new project, a new development now versus 8.5, 10 years ago? And I ask this in the sense that the more government employees you have to oversee projects or regulation, like obviously for them to keep their job, they probably are going to put in new regulations or new rules or something. Is that what's happened, or why is it so much more difficult now?
Well, that's clearly some of it. I mean, that's what regulation does. It's just like clogs the arteries in your heart, as regulation does that. But I think the secondary part is, look, in Canada, we're struggling with First Nations ownership of lands and who owns what, and does eminent domain work? Can you really get anything done without a social conscience? So these are really difficult issues, and that scares capital away, Catherine.
Hmm.
And there's such a distrust that we don't, it's hasn't been done right for the environment, or it's not good for this or that, and all of those things just scare capital away, and it goes to the spot where it's more welcome.
Yeah.
And I just think that's what's happened, to be blunt.
Hmm.
Um, you have
Well,
to say,
yeah, I can.
I need
Yeah.
jobs. Come to Canada. I want to do it. You've seen every project that's gone on, whether it's a battery plant in Quebec or in Ontario. It has to be sponsored by the government now. Private enterprise is not doing it unless they get a handout. TMX,
Yeah.
Trans Mountain Pipeline, which was once deemed to be a private enterprise capital project at $6 to $7 billion, ends up being a government boondoggle at 40 billion. I go,
Yeah.
okay, uh, government Canadians, you own it. You paid for it. Could you imagine how many schools or how many hospitals that we could have added? The government didn't need to get involved
Yeah.
in that. That's my point. They could have used
Right.
those funds for better public use, in my view.
Yeah. Well, they made it so difficult for private enterprise to be involved and build it that they had to kind of take it over and use taxpayer dollars for it. I'm wondering, Murray, as well, you have a lot of employees. How are they faring?
So we have about 8,000 in our group, Catherine, right across Canada and some in the U.S. Uh, People are under stress today, and I would say most of the employees in our group, I would say they're in the, let's call them the middle class. They're good jobs, but the middle class is struggling today. I think they're good
Hmm.
jobs, and our people are still struggling because the cost and the taxes in the system are just so high. They don't have as much money so they don't feel good. And I get it,
Yeah.
and let's
Yeah.
remember is that everything that happened, the well-to-do have done exceptionally well, but the middle
Yeah.
class
Wait,
in this economic cycle have not done well.
we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.